So we're going to talk about blunders. And what I mean when I say a blunder is I mean a move that's a serious mistake that if you'd just seen it, if you looked at it, then you would have evaluated it correctly, but you didn't look at it, and as a result, it was a serious mistake. Um, right here is a move which significantly impacts the expected outcome of the game, which the player making the move would have quickly evaluated correctly if they had seriously examined the opponent's response. So the question is, blunders, if you're not already familiar, are very common, significantly impact the outcome of many games, and is often very painful. How do you avoid them? Well, clearly by the definition, if you'd seen it, if you looked at it and evaluated it, you would have not played the move. And so the key here is to evaluate the opponent's responses that you missed, and to make sure that you're evaluating before you make the move. So obviously you can evaluate every legal move, but that's going to be very time consuming. And so one of the key things that you must do to avoid blunders is to be able to evaluate either every move very quickly, which is very difficult, or to identify those moves which are especially dangerous. It's not going to completely eliminate blunders, but it will largely reduce them because in general, a blunder is met by an opponent's response that is of a particular type that is a dangerous move. And these types are typically thought of as checks, captures, and threats. So checks, very clearly, attack to the king sharply reduces the number of legal responses available, and thus, you don't have a lot of options. Captures shift the material on the board immediately. They can be very dangerous as a result. And then threats, and that's where you're attacking an undefended or higher value piece, like minor piece attacking the queen or pawn attacking a piece. And all of these are dangerous things. So the key is how can you proactively evaluate these before you make your move? And part of it is just identifying what these different things are. And some of these are easier to identify than others. So checks, you can easily identify a check. There's whether a move is a check or not. If it's simply attacking the king. Capture, again, easy to identify to remove a piece from the board. Threats are a little less easy to identify. You can identify them proactively, but there are typically a lot of moves that can be classified as a threat. And it's not really as objectively, you can't tell as objectively whether it's a threat or not. So there's some subjectivity that goes into what's a threat. So for the purpose of this exercise, trying to reduce blunders, I really wanted to focus on checks and captures. You know immediately if it's a check or capture. If you get good at identifying all of the checks and captures available to your opponent and making sure that you look at them before you make a move, then you can eliminate really a substantial portion of the blunders from your games. In my own findings, found that about 72% of all blunders, which I have a study on my website we can point you to, but were met by check or capture. So that means that if you can proactively identify checks or captures, then you can eliminate 70+% of the blunders that are made in games, and eliminate them from your games. And these include things like hanging pieces and hanging mate and the things that are especially terrible. And so if you just get good at identifying all legal checks and captures, and there usually aren't a lot of them. And so that's what this exercise is about. Every legal check and capture, identifying your opponent's responses that meet those criteria. And I have some exercises that I put together that will help you practice this. So I'm going to go here. This is my website. On the tools section, at the bottom, I have LCAC exercises. So I'm going to go through here, put together a bunch of, from interesting games of a particular type, just a bunch of positions, and identified all the legal checks and captures that you can kind of quiz yourself on and practice. And I've got about 1,500 of these exercises, even individual positions. So let me go to this one. You can do this one here, but it's better to just go to the full study on lead chess, and you can see this individual one has 48. And how you do this is simply, it says, okay, this is the position, you're white. you're considering playing a move like knight b takes b5. This position's a little crazy, everything's hanging, but what are the black's legal checks and captures that that he has in response to this? Okay, so after you play knight takes b5, what can black do? Black can take back, of course. Pawn takes knight on b5. Also, he can take this pawn here. Knight takes e5. And then, let's see any other captures. But after this knight moves, we do have a couple checks on this diagonal. Looks like a bishop b4 check. It's going to be available as this queen a5 check. So I've got a couple checks here, and then these recaptures. And so then I make the move. And here they are, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so that was, I got that one right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Black's going to play king takes g7. What are the legal checks and captures? Well, looks like we got a few queen checks. This one here on d7, and then these two ones that lose the queen, but they're nevertheless legal, h7 and g6. And then looks like pawn takes bishop is available, and this bishop can't do anything, and the rooks and pawns can't either. So I think that's it. The 3 queen checks and that recapture. Yep. And then let's do another one. These are intended to do pretty quickly. So that's because there aren't usually that many. These are all from real games and real positions. Okay, so white's considering playing bishop takes e2. That makes sense. What are the legal checks and captures in response that black has? And they're going to be a bunch. Look at this queen. So it looks like queen d3, d2. All these checks, these moves here are check. These 3 moves here are check. c5, c4, and c3. Queen a4 is check. So I've got 6 on the c and d file. I've got a 7th on a4. Queen takes b2 is check. And looks like queen e4 is going to be check because the bishop's gone. So got these 6, and then 1, 2, 3 here. And then I've got this, so that's 9 queen checks. And then I've got queen takes f4 as a capture, of course. And then bishop f5 looks like a check. And that looks like it. Obviously, the king and pawns can't do much. So I've got 10 queen moves and a bishop check. So I think that's it. All right, so here, yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that was right. A lot of times these queen endings have a lot of checks, which is partially why queen endings are hard. Okay, so black is intending queen b5, d5. What are the responses? Well, clearly queen takes queen, and it looks like queen takes b6. And remember, I'm not even evaluating whether they're good at this point. I'm just making sure I see all of them. And then, you know, I can see, okay, queen takes b6. It's going to be very good because you lose the queen for nothing, and there's nothing going on. But unless you have looked at it, then you can't really say for sure. Sometimes queen b6 might be amazing for some reason. And, you know, it usually isn't, but you need to know it's there, and it really helps, honestly, board vision, to be able to identify every single legal check and capture on board, because you get to see where you have to see where every piece can move legally in order to make sure you've got them all. Because you see this bishop isn't doing much from that perspective. The knight can't really hit the king or anything. These pieces are obviously not doing anything. So yes, I think I get the 2 queen captures is correct. And anyway, the idea is to just get to practice this, and then in your games, when you're considering a move, just like this one, queen d5, you make sure you're aware of all the checks and captures that are legally available to your opponent, and that will help you to significantly reduce your blunders. And that's it. Thanks.